Hello everybody, my name is Claytonius and welcome to ClaytoniusDoesThings. The thing we're going to be doing today is building a PC. Yeah, that's a big shock. Anyway, for the longest time, in fact my whole life, I've been a dirty, filthy console peasant. Shut up, iPod. And I've never actually had one of those high-end gamer PCs that are much ado nowadays. All I've had is this actually very good laptop, and originally an old gateway computer that couldn't even run Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. I remember getting that game and just being so angry that it didn't have the hardware necessary to install it. Oh, I was angry. I was furious. Anywho, not too long after that, we upgraded to this thing, which is a Dell Dimension E521 desktop computer. Not entirely sure what the specs are. What I do know is that certain things this desktop couldn't handle. Like when I tried to play World in Conflict for the first time, it would basically frame by frame stuttering. And also, it would crash when doing seemingly simple things. Like, I remember it would crash whenever it tried to play those cutscenes in Civilization 4 where when you built monuments, it would do the little cutscene of a building real fast. Yeah, this thing would crash when those played, so I had to turn them off. Then a couple of years ago, I upgraded to this thing. This right here is an Alienware laptop, and let me tell you, it blew this out of the water. And in fact, were it not for the fact that it can't handle some of the rendering projects I have in mind, I probably would have stuck with this thing instead of a desktop. This here has a GTX 1050 in it, I think, or maybe a 1060. It's one of the two. But this thing, I fell in love with it, and it has treated me well, but it is time to retire it and move on. Now before we begin, I want to make one thing perfectly clear as a full disclaimer. I have never ever done this before. I wouldn't take this as being expert advice or anything. I mean, just look, the video and audio quality is garbage compared to much better instructional videos up here. But I am going to do my best, and I'm not going to lead you astray to my knowledge that I know of. In the words of one man named David Brent, it ain't much, but it's honest work. Now before we begin, it can be helpful to know how all these PC parts we're going to be putting in here work together with one another and what they actually do. And for that purpose, Editor Me has put together a little video for you guys. And while that's playing, I'm going to go change into more appropriate PC building attire. See you in a moment after the video's done. Okay folks, like he said, I've got a video here explaining how all of these computer parts work together in concert. But that's not the only thing I'm doing. You've probably noticed by now that I have a lisp as heavy as a blue whale, and it's kind of annoying to me, who has to listen to it every single time I edit one of these videos. So from now on, I'm taking account of how many times the lisp comes out in this video and every video after it. Let's go ahead and put that up there in the corner. Yeah, there we go. Also, I'm stupid. I make a lot of mistakes in this video, and to help you guys out, I'm going to slap this fat red X up here in the corner every time I make a mistake. I caught myself and corrected my mistakes most of the time and got it on film. Except for one. But I'll explain later. Anyways, here's a video explaining how your PC parts work alongside one another. Your computer, much like your body, is made up of several components that each have their own and unique function. You can really gain a better understanding of how it all works together once you understand what each individual component does. The motherboard serves as both the foundation of your computer components and the network through which all these components commune with one another. In this way, it is amalgamous to both your skeletal and nervous system, in that it serves as both the framework upon which your PC is built and the communication network through which all your computer parts are connected. All of those parts are in turn connected to the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. It serves as the computer's brain, and all processes your computer makes run through this chip at some point. CPUs are measured in both core and thread counts. The more cores and threads, the more powerful the CPU, with cores increasing the amount of work the chip can do at one time, and threads increasing the speed in which it does this work. Your graphics processing unit, or GPU, serves as the computer's ocular system and the occipital lobe, its eyes and vision-based part of the brain. It processes visual information into an image you can see on screen. Every computer that generates an image has one, from simple GPUs that are built into the CPU to high-end graphics cards. Higher quality card is capable of making a crisper and clearer image and renders them at a faster rate. Random access memory, or RAM, is short-term data storage that the computer uses to process the current tasks and commands. Your RAM is currently helping the computer you are watching this with run the machine coding associated with every task you currently have in progress. This data can be swiftly accessed and in a random order, hence the name. But this data is also temporary and if wiped every time you boot up the computer. Data storage devices allow for the permanent storage of data within a piece of hardware. These components come in different varieties and can store different amounts of data. They also have different read-write speeds, which is how fast the computer pulls information from and places into the hardware respectively. Hard drives, solid-state drives, and M.2 drives are the three main kinds of data storage, with hard drives usually having large storage space but slow read-write speeds, and M.2 drives having lower storage space but incredible read-write speeds. This is kind of like your long-term memory, but with machine precision. Lastly, your power supply, or PSU, acts as a form of heart for the computer. Instead of blood, your PSU supplies electricity to your computer to give it the energy it needs to function. The computer will draw more or less electricity depending on the task at hand. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get back to the build. With that out of the way, let's get down to the things you're going to need beforehand. First and foremost, you're going to need an acceptable working surface. Now, in theory, any hard, flat surface like this will work. Like, I could even use a hardwood floor if I wanted to. But there are some that are better than others, and the one you want to avoid of any of the others is any fabric-based surface, like carpet or rugs, because they'll build up static electricity and cause something called electrostatic discharge, which is a fancy term for when static builds up so much that it can arc from one person to another, like when you touch somebody and shock the tar out of them. Yeah, it's like that, except the small little electrical wiring parts, sometimes they can't handle it and they snap in half under the tension. I learned about that when I was doing a pre-hire training class for electronic assembly. But anywho, while this desk I made this, is a good choice to use, we could make it better with the absolute best kind of working surface. Failed the dramatic roll there, but you could use one of these. This is an anti-static mod bat made by Gamers Nexus. You can buy one of these on their website. I think it's like $100, but let's change the angle and get a better view. Now I'm going to go over the tools I will be using today, but in all honesty, all you really need is just one of these, Phillips head screwdriver. All this other stuff kind of bells and whistles in many ways, but they can help. I'll explain what they do in a moment. But like I said, all you really need is just a Phillips head screwdriver. You can use one like this, an electric one that you mash and it goes. Even one in a Swiss Army knife if you wanted to. Any of them will work. But today we're going to be using a driver set from iFixit, some zip ties to help with cable management, as well as these pair of snips to clip off the ends of them. And I've also heard that tweezers could help with managing wires and cables, but I don't see how that works, so we're just going to get rid of those. And also we're going to be using some thermal paste to put on the CPU later when I hook it up to the AIO. I'll explain more on that when we get there. But yeah, this is pretty much all the tools we're going to be using today. Oh, and one thing that's kind of helpful is these. It's called an anti-static bracelet, and you put it on your wrist, and you see that metal right there? That goes against your wrist right there, and electricity will go from you through the wire that comes with it. Just click it in there like that, and then attach the little alligator clip to a metal output. For example, on me, I'm going to be putting it on the on the lean back adjuster that's on my chair here. If I can get it, there we go. And now what electricity I generate will go into this through the wire and get grounded out and shot out through the metal on my chair. So we're good on that. First off, we're going to do a little bit of case prep. This here is a Phanteks Infor Pro case, and if you're wondering where my ESD went, my static bracelet thing, it's right here on my leg. I wanted to be out of my way. But anyways, you're just going to take off these two thumb screws that are right here and right here. You just undo them like so. And inside there's going to be an accessory box and your manual, both of which are important. Your manual, this thing right here, has got a whole bunch of technical information and a bunch of guides on how to install things like your motherboard or fans or AIOs into it, and also tells you how much clearance you have in terms of fans and AIOs. And motherboards. This here's a full tower case, by the way, so we can fit what's called an EATX motherboard, but it's basically a fancy speak for a motherboard that's bigger than an ATX form factor. In your accessory box, you'll have some little extra zip ties. This is a radiator mount plate, and the box with all your little screws and insulation pieces in it. But we're not going to worry about that right now. First thing we're going to do is take off the two side panels on this, which is the tempered glass side panel and the side panel that's on the back. So I guess the side panel is not coming off, but this one is. Now for this side panel, you got these two screws right here. They're thumb screws as well, and you can just go ahead and undo those. And the side glass panel will slide right on out. Got a socket for a screw. Oh, why didn't I use it? I don't know. I'm kind of dumb. But then again, we all are. Just a little bit. Come on. There we go. Now you just grab on this handle here and kind of pull out. And it pops out from in here, from where it kind of slips in between here and hooks on along this thing. But I'm going to put this up and we're going to take a look at what's behind here. Alright, so back here is where a lot of your wires and electrical components are going to be. This right here is a pulse width modulator, and it helps control your fan speeds and whatnot, and connects to your motherboard. And all these different little wires, luckily for you, me, and everyone else who's building a PC, they're usually labeled, and even if they aren't, your manual will tell you what they are. For example, these here are for the HDD LED or the hard drive LED, and the power switch. This one's for the USB. You got HD audio. You got the pulse width modulator input, power cords, things like that. And you also got things like for your reset switch and whatnot. You also got a lot of different grommets and built-in Velcro ties to help with cable management. You got these two places right here, which are where solid state drive or SSD drives set, like those SATA drives and whatnot. That's where they set and they can get plugged in. And you also got these hard drive sleds, which come out like so. You just slide the hard drive in there, you can just slap it back in there if you can get it to line up, or you know, look like a fool on the internet like I'm doing right now. There we go. Slow brain. This here, behind here is where things like disk drive are going to go, and your power supply is going to be on the opposite side of this. So we're going to flip it around and get a better look on what's on this side of it. Alright, back here we got the onboard PC fan that comes with the case, and there's another one right behind here. And I think, no, it's just one. You got the solid state drive sleds that you unscrew and put them in the back. To be honest with you, I freaked out a little while ago thinking I was missing my SSD brackets, and I found them. Here they are right here. Up here are the little switches you press and just slide the extra optical disk drives and things like that in. Got a slew of different grommets. I can't even figure out where to put my hands. A slew of different grommets up here for cable management and wire management and make it look nice and clean. This here goes to your motherboard fan. And this thing right here is a power supply shield. You can take this off when you're ready to put your power supply in. And also back here you got your stands for your motherboard, and also you got these little braces right here. You take these off to make room for things that you're going to be hooking into your PCIe Express slots, like your graphics card. But now that we got case prep out of the way, we're going to get to some of the more fun parts. Next, we're going to be looking at motherboard. In my case, I got a Prestige X570 Creation. This is an AMD motherboard, and it only works with AM4 chips. Whenever you get a motherboard, you're going to want to make sure that the chip you're getting for it, the CPU, will fit into your motherboard. As an example, if I got an Intel chip, but this motherboard, the CPU wouldn't fit in because it's not the same kind of CPU socket. But I do have an AMD chip, and you'll see that in a moment. But for right now, let's go ahead and open this bad boy up and get it out. There are a couple of things you can do to your motherboard before you put it in your case. And it'll be a lot easier putting this thing together if you do these things while the motherboard's outside of the case. Now this right here, you got all like your screws and whatnot. Your manual will also be in here, which is right here. Mine's already out of the box because I've been reading over it like a good boy. And you're gonna sit this over here out of view. Well, I would. You might just set it next to you. And then you're gonna take out the motherboard itself. Put that to the side and get it out. This here is an anti-static bag. It kind of helps prevent against static damage. Now we get to figure out how to open it. There should be, there it is. Can't really say, I know it's kind of like taped in here at some point. Move that out of the way and just, ow, move it on out of that way. Now this here's your AIO shield. Luckily for me, mine's already installed. Like it came with it up there. But some of you poor souls might have to manually install it, and I understand that they're kind of difficult to do. Right, so right here we got Oh, poop. Well, this is an aftermarket one, and it does work, because the people that I got it from, it wouldn't take it and resell it if it did not work. So, your CPU is going to go right here, and this is also where your cooler is going to mount. Going to mount right here. You got your PCI Express slots, which is where your graphics card and whatnot go. But first, we're going to put in the M.2 drive. Well, like I said, first thing we're going to do is put the M.2 drive in this thing. For me, I'm going to be using this 1 terabyte M.2 drive. It's an AdLink S70 1 terabyte drive. All my main software is going to be going on this, like my operating system, the Adobe Premiere and other products like that, and other different small software programs that my content creation cannot be done without. Okay, so to install these on this motherboard, you're going to take and undo the screws here, 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 and here. You got to take this shield off first. So I'm going to do that real quick. And also, you're going to want to screw and unscrew with confidence. What I mean by that is, you're probably going to be a little nervous doing this for the first time, like, shoot, I am. And you're going to want to baby it too much. Well, don't be afraid to tighten things up, or if something's not coming loose because it's tightened in so much, don't be afraid to give it a little but don't be, buck wild with it. Just wrist tight is what you need. So we're gonna set this to the side like that. We're gonna get out our SSD. By the way, this motherboard is secondhand, if I haven't mentioned that already. That's why things may seem a little weird at first. Alright, so the way this goes in is quite simple, really. First I'm going to see where it's going to be at, so that way I know. Okay, we are good in terms of the standoff. That thing right there is your standoff. That's something that needs to be sitting on when you screw it in, and it's only one screw. Double checking this manual. Yeah, we're good. Standoff's already installed, so that means I'm going to take this teeny bitty itty bitty baby screw that I can very easily lose, and there it goes. I'm going to say very difficult to get out of the bag like this. Okay, so take and just see this little notch. There'll be another little notch like right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's there, trust me. You just gonna slide that in. Good land, I do reckon. There we go. We got one installed SSD. Now, when I get ready to put this thing back on, there. When you're done with these, don't throw away your boxes and whatnot. Save them. Now we're going to put in the RAM, which is going to go over here. For my RAM, I got 32 gigabits of DDR4 memory. It's 3200 megahertz. I got Corsair's Dominator Platinum, which is pretty good from what I understand. Like, there's better stuff out there, but this is not bottom of the barrel either. Excuse me for a moment, I'm gonna knife to slide those open. There we are. Now, you might be wondering, which one of these do I put this in? Well, for that, you can go to your handy dandy manual and it will tell you. Because you got two channels on this thing. You got A1, A2, B1, B2. And you want to make sure you got it in the right ones, because you'd hate to put them both in A1 and A2 or B1 and B2. Because then that'll kill dual channel support on your board, which is not good. On this motherboard, it's A1, A2, B1, B2. And the two we want are here and here. We got those that kind of, these little devices on the side, these little clasps that you just move out of the way like that. Alright, now that we got that out of here, I'm going to take and you'll look in here and you'll see these little slots in it, like this thing right here, two, and you're going to line it up and you'll know which way it goes in. Like this is the wrong way. It goes in like this. It's supposed to be a clasp sound, or a bit of a click. Oh man, like, you know how I said earlier, screw with confidence? Well, I gotta press in DIMM slots with confidence. I was so scared I was gonna break it. Not going in further, but no. Don't even follow my own advice. That wasn't good. Did you hear that? Where it went click and click. I was mashing on both sides, but it still went this one first and then that one. That's not good. It's my understanding that it can bend the little gold connectors, which can cause it to not pick up the memory, which is bad. I paid for 2 sticks. I'd like to get 2 sticks. But we got them in there nice and good like we're supposed to now. And this is another example of why this video is more for entertainment than for knowledge. Like, go look at JayzTwoCents or BitWit or something like that. Shoot, even Busy Bee ASMR's video, probably more knowledgeable and easier to learn from than mine. Right, so the next part we're going to be doing is installing the CPU. And for my CPU, I got a Ryzen 9 5950X CPU. This is a year ago, this was the highest thing you could get without going into Threadripper. And Threadripper is a little bit, one, it's a bit too much above my pay grade, and two, I'm not comfortable enough with building computer parts. I mean, with building computers, to just drop that kind of cash on something knowing that I might break it. So I just got one of these instead. Alright, so get this out of here. While this is in there, I'm going to show you some things. When you get this, there's going to be a little arrow pointing to where it needs to go. Like on this one, yeah, right there, and it's right there. And I'm looking, and there's another arrow right there on this, so it's going to sit in there like so. Alright, so I'm going to take and mash up and lift this up like that. To be honest, you guys, I'm a little nervous. Grab it by the good land, that's heavy. Grab it by the corners. I don't want to touch the gold. And just line it up, and there we go. It's in there nice like it should be. It's going to be kind of tight. You're going to get a little nervous. And bam, your CPU is installed. Whew, that was exhilarating and nerve-wracking all at the same time. Now, let's move on to putting this bad boy in the case. Alright, so I've gotten the case laid out on its side because it's much easier to put the motherboard in this way. But there's a couple things I want to show you before I put it in, because I'm not going to be able to get a good angle when I do put it in, because I don't have something hold it over my table like so. So, when you get ready to put your motherboard in, it may or may not come with these standoffs installed. I was lucky enough that all of mine came installed, but that they aren't, you're going to want to put them in, because these keep your motherboard from making contact with the actual metal part of the case and shorting out your motherboard. But I got all of mine in. There's one here, here, there. I'm a little hesitant. There, and there. Oh, and there's one right there. But yeah, that's all three of them, and you'll see holes on your motherboard that'll line up with them. For example, we got there. There's one right there. Another one right there. Right there. So, let me go back to with this open and I will set it in here and screw it in. Alright, so your case would have come with a little box of screws like these. It'll tell you which screws to use for your motherboard. And if you want an extra sense of security like I do, you take and kind of just screw one in to make sure it's the right size. Like right here, I had the wrong one. I think these are the right one though. I'm gonna drop it. Keep forgetting this thing's magnetized. Oh yeah, that works. And like I said before, my standoffs are already in there. So I'm gonna take the motherboard and just slide it in here. Alright. So this is gonna come out the AIO port in the back. And there's a fan connector that's in my way. There's a phone ringing and they're gonna have to wait. Yeah, there we go. We got it. It's in. That's what she said. Gotta get one juvenile joke in. One. Okay, so I'll start with this one here in the middle. And like I said before, just wrist tight, but screw with confidence. I got it. Whew. And now we got one installed motherboard. Hooray! Alright, so now what we're going to be doing is putting the AIO on, or all-in-one, which is a water cooler, CPU cooler. And I took the top panel and the front panel off. It wasn't a big deal, they just pop out, but anyways, I'm sorry y'all didn't get to see that. So the AIO I'm using is a Arctic Liquid Freezer 2. It is a 360 millimeter long radiator. And I checked with my manual and it most certainly does fit that. In fact, it can fit up to a 420 if I wanted to. But we got a 360 and I'm gonna get it out of this case and get it in there. So I got it out of the package and thing looks really cool. It's upside down at the moment. I'm gonna flip it this way and slide it underneath here. And screws are gonna mount it over here along this side that I just showed you, and the hose is gonna go in through this hole and hang out there for a little while I screw this thing in, and it's gonna pull air from inside the case and push it out, which I'm not sure how these other fans are configured, but at least this way I know it's pulling cool air, I mean hot air that'll be in here, and thrusting it up into the open to cook me in this small room. First thing I'm going to do is take this little baggie and set the washers up here so that way I can at least get it in place. I'm going to put 4 screws in to get it in place, and then I'm going to put the main ones in. Ah, I was wrong. I have actually screwed these in the wrong hole. I'll be back. So I figured out what I was doing wrong. I thought it went in like here and here and all that good stuff. No. It goes in right here and use the tension to hold it in place. I only got a few in right now, but I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of them in. Boom, we got one installed AIO. So, I got the AIO in here, and now I'm going to take and attach the AIO pump to the CPU. And to do that, the first thing I got to do is take off these 2 aftermarket fan mounts. These are for like little standalone stock fans. But I'll be right back and take that on out of there. Something I did wrong here. I put these on backwards. They're supposed to be flipped that way, so I'm going to fix that real quick. This is what we wanted, right here. Alright, so I got it right side up, and something had fallen out of the back. This thing had fallen out of the back, and this is what the those 4 little screw heads is what the pump is supposed to mount to. And I had it like that because this fell off when I undid the screws to take off the aftermarket fan mounts. And I was sitting there for about a good 30 minutes wondering where the screws were to fit that hole. But I got everything together now, and I'm gonna go ahead and start putting it on. Surprise, surprise, I got something else I did wrong. You see those, these things right here? Yeah, they're all wrong. These little washers right here are supposed to be underneath these. not on top of them. So I'm gonna fix that real quick and be right back. That's how it's supposed to be. We got it. Alright, now to get this pump on here. So for this, I'm going to be using some Thermal Grizzly Hydronaut thermal paste. And you might want to use the same concept you do if you use wood glue. So you put a little pea drop up there, and then you think to yourself, wait, it's supposed to cover the whole thing. Well, like wood glue, when you put that little drop there, and then you set something on it, it's going to smush it and flatten that drop out to about the size of a quarter or a 50-cent piece. So, I'm going to take and put a little bit. Pea-size drop. Put your cap screw back on your thing. Like that. And then peel this bad boy off. Ooh, that's nice. Don't you just love peeling things? And then I'm gonna take and set this up here. Pump and radiator attached. Sorry about that pause during the zoom out. I can probably find a way to move this hose to the side. Oh, and another thing, you always want the radiator to be above the pump. I'm not sure why, I've just always heard that from people who most certainly know what they're doing. And this little cord right here, we're going to let it hang out for now, but on your motherboard there'll be a little writing above some of these pins on the corner that says pump fan. That's what this goes into. So we're going to move on to the next part, which is going to be putting the hard drive, solid state drive, and the optical drive in. Alright, I got it. What I ended up having to do was on these arms right here that pop out, had to snip these two things right here, and also had to go out to the shop, take a Dremel tool, and kind of grind down the little nipples that were on the bottom of, not the hard disk drive, but the sled, and grind them down so that way it could sit smoothly on the bottom. I wouldn't recommend doing that in your case. I did it because I didn't have any choice. Just another reason to not listen to anything I say, and don't use this as a guide. Don't. But to get this back in, we're just going to slide it back in and boom, there we go. And that's ready to go, and we can just plug in our things here and here when we get ready to, and we'll be good. Alright, next part is going to be the SATA drive, which is going to go on this sled. It's had another issue with those sleds. The rubber grommets on them that my thumbs are near, well, my thumb and my finger is near, got my way of setting the SSD securely in there, and also the screws were off center, so I couldn't use the sled. I ended up putting it in one of the HDD sleds, as you'll see. Alright, so since I can't put it on the sled like I wanted to, put it in this thing. So I'll take it out, and it's gonna go in here like so. Right, we ran into a problem, but we got around it, so we're back in business. Now I just slide this right back in here. We're good. It's back in action. Alright, now I'm going to flip this thing around and slap the optical disk drive in. Alright, so this here, get out of here, is my optical disk drive. As you can see, it's from Asus, and it's going to go right here. Now to get this off, we're going to go around here, and it just pops off, and then I just slide it in and it clicks right in here. And we should be good to go. So I'm going to set the camera up over there so you guys can watch me do it. Alrighty. Alright, here's those screws in. And there's what it looks like from the front. One disk drive. And here's the 4 little screws that went on this side. And that's actually easy to put in compared to all the other stuff I've done. Alright, now we're going to, I guess all that's left is the graphics card and the power supply. Then we get to cable manage. Woo! Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be putting in the graphics card, and kind of like putting in the RAM, it just clicks into a slot. There's all you got to do. The only screwing you got to do is you got to take off the PCIe expansion slot brackets to get them out of your way, but we'll do that in a moment. But what we're going to be putting in here is a GeForce RTX 3050 graphics card. Not nothing to write home about, but in this economy it kind of is. But this will do what I need it to do and more, which is what I want. Right now, the first thing I'm going to do is take off these 2 brackets right here, because it's going to go in this PCI Express slot. You may be mistaken in thinking that it doesn't matter which one it goes in. It does. All of these have different bandwidth, and usually your top one has the highest bandwidth, and in this motherboard's case that's certainly true. This one does have the highest bandwidth, so it's going to go in there. But I'm going to take my driver and just unscrew these. Now you got 2 exposed PCIe slots. Now, for the moment of truth, snatch the graphics card out of here. But it just makes sure your thing's open like that. Yeah. I'm gonna line it up. Well shoot, I got the wrong thingamajigs off. Hold up. Bigger bag up. It helped. It'd help if I took that off. Alright, you're gonna see, like, let me move that out of the way, that little notch right there. Gonna line up this notch right here. Slide right up there. No, I got to change the position here. There it goes. We got one secure graphics card. I just gotta put this back up here and we'll be almost done. All we gotta do after this is put the power supply on. I mean, not the power supply, but the Yeah, the power supply. I'm being dumb. Alright. We're going to have to take this power supply shield off, and to do that I'm going to have to flip it around. These screws here, here, and right here need to come off to get the power supply shield off. So I'm going to do that. Alright, y'all. Cable management's almost done. We got one thing left to do. I'll do in front of you as an example. But other than that, we are all done and ready to move on to the next part. I'll show you what all these here are and how much pain I went through trying to put them in. Man. This guy right here is your ATX 24 pin power cable. It's usually the widest one you have, and I've seen some that the place where it plugs in comes out, like this one is, but instead it's sideways, like this SATA plug-in right here and this USB 3 plug-in over here. As you can see, there's not much room to work with. It was such a tight fit trying to get this in here that I ended up having to pull the motherboard out and plug it in that way and then just set it back in here. Alright, let's look at it from the other side. This back here is a crap fest, and I can't even back up far enough to show you all of it, so I'm gonna just show you like this. But this is the back side, and you still want to cable manage it best you can, but it's not something people are gonna see. The back side panel is gonna be covering all this up. See, you got your SATA cables, your SATA power cables, and speaking of SATA cables, that's the last one we gotta put in. It's gotta go in right there, fish through about right here, or one of these grommets, and go right into the SATA plugs that are somewhere on this side. Now what I do is get a sense of where they're gonna go. Like, where is the cord gonna go once you plug it in? Or where does it go on the motherboard? Like, there were some, like your HD audio and your LED switches and all that were over here or right up in here, when in fact they plug in over here. So it would fish them through right here or right there, so that way they just barely come out on the motherboard side and then just go right to where they plug in, and it looks nice and clean, as opposed to just fishing it through and trying to stretch it all the way to where it's supposed to go. And then you got this on the other side as well. This here's a back view of all the cables that I plugged in. I'll show you what some of them are. This here was that big ATX power cable I told you about. Fished it through right here, and it plugs in on this side of the motherboard, then swivels on down and goes right through this big rubber grommet on the side, which is on the other side of where the power supply is. These here are the two CPU power slots. They plug into the, they either plug into the SATA port or the PCIe slots that are on the back of the power supply. I can't remember, but I know it's one of the two. Okay, so these guys right here went to the back of the PCIe slots on the power supply. Now that we got that out of the way. And you see this cable right here going down like this, and another one like this. These are the two SATA power cables I had to use. The SATA power cables are longer than the ones that go into the motherboard, but both of them have this kind of, see that L shape in the slot? Both of them have that. Like, you can see the kind of L shape right here, and it helps you figure out which way it's supposed to go in. Yeah, the L on this one is like that. If I turn this, it's like that. So turn around, and now we're like that. So this here is the cord that goes directly from the device that's using the SATA plug to the motherboard, so that way it can, this actually hooks it up to the computer itself. This here gives it power. But these guys have several SATA outlets on the same cord. When you look at the back of the box at the power supply, and it'll tell you that you got 11 SATA power cables, or it'll just say SATA power cable X11, and it makes you think you got 11 SATA power cables. You do not. You only have a couple, but you have 11 of these individual plug things that are attached to the cables all together. So what I did was that this is one cable, and I got one plugged in here, went over one, and then another one plugged into the SATA SSD, and then it fishes through here, gets tucked in here, and then just slips right in there to the power supply. And this one over here, I got the front one plugged into the optical disk drive, and then the rest of them just kind of tucked in here as best I could. I wasn't going to say neatly, because it's not neat, not by a long shot. Then you kind of got it winding up around here, going around and back into the power supply. Now, these right here all are usually just fans and whatnot, like fan. Yeah, if you look on the side, it'll have these little words or small little acronyms that tell you what it's hooked to. Most of these are like the fans that are hooked into the case itself, as well as like the LED hitters for them. And one of them, this one right here, and this one right here, hook to motherboard. This one here goes all the way around and will hook into a part of the motherboard that I'll show you when I flip this around. And this one right here went all the way, and I think it tucked in. Hold up, let me find it. I think this is it right here. No, it's not. Oh well. Wait a second. Oh, it's just a piece of the grommet. Remember that I thought it was the power switch LED header. Yeah, when I was going over this case, some of the little tiny little plug-ins, like for your power switch and your reset switch and whatnot, the one that turns on the LED for the power switch up here, missing, not in there at all. I understand that some people give that a lot of leeway, but I prefer to have brand new things that I paid money for directly from a authorized retailer. I usually prefer that they come with the things they say they come with, but I digress. Looking over it, I think I just realized that this plug right here actually powers the fans that are in the case, so I need to plug that in. This one over here is for the pulse width module, or PWM, which I don't actually have one up here, I don't think, but a pulse width module tells the computer how fast it should be using the fans and how much it should be pumping through the AIO or your water cooler system, all those things. That's what the pulse width module does. Now watch me figure out that this thing is that. But so far as I know, it's a fan hub that's on the back of the motherboard. On the back of the case. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this one in. And I got SATA power cables running right through here. And Lord help me, I do not want to try and plug something else into the back of that power supply, because I'd have to turn this thing around, snatch the power supply shield off, and just plug it in that way. And I do not feel like doing that. So I'm going to take and undo this Velcro right here. Like so. I should be able to take and pop, just like that. Now, I'm going to take, and to keep these guys somewhat together, I'm going to take and feed this back through here, and you, sir, can be on the outside. I don't want you to get caught up in here. Feed this back through the loop. If I can, it wants to go through the motherboard slot. Now watch this be like, God knows how long of me trying to get this thing to feed through the way I want it to. Oh boy. Yeah, most of these connectors are made out of, like the places where they plug in are usually made out of gold, and especially on the front part of the motherboard, or out of real flimsy plastic. Or in the case of these, you do got what looks like steel, or possibly more likely silver or something of that type. Both silver and gold are extremely malleable metals, which means they're soft and bendy, and sometimes even snappy. Plug this guy in. It says when you're doing this, it'll tell you on your motherboard manual when you're plugging these in, that if you use the L-shaped one, how it's got a baggie that's got two. It's got one L-shaped one, and then next to it it's got one that's got both of these flat ends into it. Tells you if you use one of these to plug this into the SATA device itself and plug this into the motherboard. I know you'd be tempted to do this like I am, but just do what the manual tells you to. So I'm gonna plug this in right here like that, and I don't know if you heard that click, but that means it's in there like it should be. And I'm going to turn this around so that way I know where to feed it, which one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grommets to feed it to. I know it's going to be one of these two, I'm just not sure. But I'll be right back and I'll turn this bad boy around. Alright, we're back on the other side of the case. And the SATA plug-in I just plugged in back there needs to go right in here. This motherboard has 6 SATA plug-ins. There's 2, 4, 6. They're one on top of the other. Got 2 plugged in right here on SATA imports 1 and 2. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. So I'm gonna take and fish this one through. Could I do the bottom? If I do the bottom one, this one right here, I could fish it through and have more room to plug into here, as opposed to right here, wouldn't have much room to back up, straighten it up, and then plug it in. So I'm going to take and fish it through this bottom one, like that. Kind of, there we go. Get it to back up into one of the empty slots, and use the reflection on the metal to barely see where the L is. Come here, flashlight. Yeah, I got it. So it's like this, and I don't know if I'm going to plug anything in here later on, but just in case, I'm going to try and plug it into the bottom one. So, watch me strain my rear end off trying to plug in one thing. Whew. Come on, there it goes. There we go. Now it's plugged into the motherboard. Alright, now to show you what all these other little things do. Right up here, you got your, you got one that'll be labeled pump fan, or, yeah, pump fan. That's what this, red fart. That's what this plugs into. Next to that, you got the CPU fan, which is more, yeah, CPU fan one. You also got system fan, and I'm not entirely sure what that plugs into. People in the comments just set everybody straight. Because like I said, this is the first time I've ever done this. I had to keep looking back to my manual and my different manuals in my phone to make sure I was doing everything right. And speaking of which, shout out to PC Master Race on Reddit for helping me get this together. Not the mods themselves, but just the members of the community. Great help, guys. Greatly appreciated. God bless you. Anywho, go around here, and right here is one of two plugins for your thermal sensor. Thermal sensor is this guy right here. It's got this little doodad on the end of it that senses the temperature inside, so that way I can see how badly my computer's about to burst into flames because I don't have this hooked up right. Hashtag first timer problems. And right up here you'll see one that says J Corsair 1. This is for those Corsair pulse width modules that I'm going to put a picture of up right now. Do it right now, future me. Yeah, it's for one of those. And it plugs in right there. And from what I understand, you can have a good deal of issues with those. Because even though there's a plug-in for it, like specifically, I mean, it has the brand name right on it. It still has issues. But from what I understand, the Corsair PMW also does things in addition to fan speeds, does things like LED control and whatnot, instead of just a regular stream. It'll pulse like that and give you an epileptic seizure, which is always great. You got more system fan and plugins right here. You got a whole bunch of fans. And speaking of bending, I bent one of the system fan cables, which if I had to choose any one of these to bend, it'd be one of the extra system fan and headers. Because if it would have been something like this little batch down here, which is JFP1, I would have been screwed. What goes down here into JFP1 are the little plugins that came with the case that go to things like your reset switch, your power switch, and the HDD LEDs. So, like I said before, I'm missing the power switch LEDs, which means this guy right here won't light up when I turn it on. But hey, the power switch itself works, and I can live without a light. Just take note that I still prefer for all the plugins to be in the case. Anywho, it might not even have come with one originally, I don't know. But then again, it does have a LED in the plugin zone. But it does tell you which one to plug in where in the manual. As you'll see this, and it'll just be one whole hub of different prongs, and it doesn't tell you which one they are on the board. You just gotta look in your manual and it'll tell you this one goes here, that one goes there, and this one goes here. And yes, they do have to be positive to negative hooked correctly. Luckily for you, it has a little arrow on it where the positive is, and one of them even has HDD LED positive negative, and that let me know this one's positive, that one's negative, and it also had the arrow on the positive part. So I stuck that in there, fit in there just like it should. You got two USB plugins on this board. You got one right here and one right here. These are standard like USB headers, just plug it in. Got one right there and that one's free. This guy right here was the USB 3 port. This was kind of hard to figure out as I looked in my manual, and it told me that I needed to find a USB Type-C plug and put it in right there at JUB5. Couldn't find that Type-C plug to save my life, but I did have a USB 3 header in here, well, connector in here. It was this guy with the blue end, and you got two spaces to plug him in, right here and right there. They're underneath this device, the Frozer shield that covers up the M.2 drives. And that one there was also difficult to put in. I even had to take out the bottom hard drive sled and slip it in through there and plug it in that way, and then put the hard drive sled back in. Like the whole thing, you can take the whole sled racks out instead of individually. I think it's like 3 to a rack. Yeah, I took that out and plugged that guy in right there, and now he is good to go. By the way, I should mention that this motherboard has an obscene amount of USB plugins on it. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, but those are for the case. On this thing we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. we have 13 standard USB plugins that are, you got 2 USB 2.0 plugins that are on the top, and the rest of them are USB 3 plugins. And you got 1 USB Type-C plugin that probably isn't going to work, but I looked at it and it looks like a place where you plug in your phone or your... Ooh, I'm filming this on my phone. I'll figure it out when I get there. We'll burn that bridge when I come to it. But anywho, that's for plugging in things like a phone or an iPod or whatnot, which, other than this project right here, isn't something I'm too worried about. Alrighty, Roo. Got everything plugged in like we should, and it's time to close this up, put the back panel back on, and oh, one more thing, I will tell you how I put the power supply in. You take this thing right here off. This guy right here, he's screwed in 3 things on the back, and you pull it off. Now this cable right here is a PCIe cable. And the way this is designed, the only way it's getting on there is if you fish it through there beforehand. I could fish it through there after, but getting it plugged in would be next to impossible while this is in place. So what I did was that I just stuck it through, and before I screwed it in, plugged it into the back of the PSU box, and then just shoved it in place and screwed it in using the 4 thumb screws that are on this side. I'll show you how it's plugged up when I close this. And another thing was that I don't know if you saw it or not, but I do have zip ties. I got one here, 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 2 here, and some over here to keep these guys in line. But like I said beforehand, to help cable manage, you just find the closest grommet that the plug's going to be going to. Like for this USB, the closest grommet is this one on the bottom. So even though it was all the way over here originally, took it back, pulled it loose, and then just fished it through this one, plugged it right in, and then tucked the cable on the other side. So that way it looks like it comes right out, goes right into the motherboard, and isn't going like halfway across the case to get to one location. But also, to help with that, like some of these are out here in the open anyway. Like these guys wanted to spread apart, and this one had extra PCIe cable and a pigtail that was there. So I zip tied those together to kind of hide those, and I zip tied these together to keep them from wobbling all over the place. Just keep the 2 cords bound together like Alabama siblings. And over here, I got the bundle of cable that was the thermal sensor. It was dangling over here, but I know these guys can get kind of hot, and I didn't want it to melt the plastic, so I took and tucked it over here and kind of bound it up like it was when it come up here. When I pulled it out of the package, it had one of those red ties wrapped around it and was wrapped kind of like a figure 8. So I kept part of the figure 8, had this little doodad hang off, then just zip tied it to the SATA cable plugs over here and got it tucked neatly in this corner. Neatly is used subjectively in this sentence. This is neat to me. To other guys out there, it could be absolutely dog crap. But to me, it looks pretty good. And like I said, I've never done this before. This is a new venture for me. And all that considered, I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm going to close this up, and we're going to take a look at the back of this thing. Alright, now that we got this bad boy turned around, let me show you what's on the AIO Shield here. Over here you got this clear CMOS button that, from what I understand, you press it and hold it and it'll reset your BIOS by clearing everything on it and setting it to factory defaults. Might be wrong on that. If I am, I'll post the correction now. Over here you got your 2 USB 2.0 ports. And right here you got your PS2 slot. PS2 slot is for older model mice and keyboards, and the name from it comes from Personal System 2, which is an IBM computer system that got put out in the 80s. Right here you got 2 coax cables that are used for a Wi-Fi antenna. This motherboard came with one, and I'll show you how it's put on, but I don't really need it because I got a Ethernet cable running through, and I will be using that. This is part of the main reason why I got this motherboard. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 USB 3.0 ports on the back. The reason why I like this is because I was using this thing right here as a means to run all the different peripherals I have on my laptop. This is a USB port and it helps with that. This thing right here, I can plug it straight in. Things like my Stream Deck, my Razer Tartarus, the capture card, all that good stuff, right into this thing. Over here is your USB Type-C cable, which is usually for things like phones and whatnot. And these two right here are where Ethernet cables plug in, and yeah, there is a difference. This bottom one right here is for 10 gigabit per second connections. I don't have a cable for that. That's usually like a Cat 8 cable. I have a Cat 6, which is still good because they can run about 1 gig per second. And these two lights here indicate how well your service is working. If it's green and blinking, that means you got a standard good connection, but if it's orange and blinking, that means you got your maximum connection. So over here, if this one was orange and blinking, it means that it's working at about 1 gig per second. And if this one's orange and blinking, it's working at 10 gigs per second, which is extremely fast from what I understand. Right down here, you got your SPDIF out, which is the Sony Philips digital input port, which is where you put different audio equipment, usually manufactured by Sony Digital or Philips Digital, hence the name. Over here we got your audio ports. You got your right speaker out, your center speaker out, left speaker out, and your I can't remember what this is for in terms of speakers, but I do know it's also could be used as a line in, and this is for your mic. These two right here you could use for headphones and the mic respectively, but I got a different setup for that, and that's another story for another video. Down here is where you got your display ports at. Right here you got two HDMI ports here, and two display ports here and here. These are what your monitor plugs into and let you get a picture. Now I'm going to move this to where it's going to be, which is over here in this corner, and I'll be right back and show you the monitor I got for this thing, because computer can't really do much without a monitor and some other equipment. By the way, this here is the antenna that came with the motherboard. I'm going to show you how it works real quick. Just set it wherever you want as far as the cable will reach. And you take these two coax cables and just screw them in. And voila, there it is. Plugged in, and you got one Wi-Fi antenna ready to go. But cable connection is much better, and that's what I'm going to be using. A little bit on how the studio is set up before I go further. This is going to go over here. And right here we got that Ethernet cable I was telling you about. Goes up through here into the attic and loops all the way down to the opposite end of the house where the internet modem is. The way our internet is, we got DSL, and there's a small little box that sits on the side of the wall that's connected to the phone jack that the modem has to be plugged into, and it's all the way on this opposite side of the house where the original computer room is. So I had to find an Ethernet cable that was long enough to fish up through here, all the way over there, but it worked out. This is going to go into the back of that, and this right here is a little hole I cut out in this desk to run the power cable for like the monitor and the and the computer itself to be able to run through. It's going to plug in to this power surge right here, which is going to be over here like this. It's going to run along the wall and plug in right here. That way it's out of sight, out of mind, and once I throw a carpet down in here, it's going to be looking pretty good. Now to get the computer over here and to plug this stuff in. Alright, so you got your tower put together and all that good stuff. We got our computer, we got our keyboard, we got our monitor, we got our tower, and now what? Good question, I'll show you what. So, I accidentally skipped over one of these, but I'll explain what I did. But first you want to turn the computer on after you get everything plugged up, just like so. And you want to be real fast on that delete key to bring up BIOS, because the boot screen goes by really fast. Hold on. There it was. That was the boot screen. Now here we are at BIOS, also known as a basic input-output system. I will not lie to you and tell you that I know what all of this crap does. Some of it's kind of obvious, like this is telling me what my motherboard is, what my CPU is, memory size, all that good stuff. But I don't know what a V-core is. I think it has something to do with voltage, because it's 1.458 volts. Then you got DDR voltage, which is 1.228 volts. And then you got your BIOS version, which I updated. That's the part that I forgot to show you guys. But don't worry, I got a link to a video in the description of a gentleman whose video I used to figure out how to do this. And so now we get to do the fun part of installing an OS. So, you see how this USB right here, this little thing right here, kind of shaded in red? Normally it kind of looked like these grayed out. But this is the jump drive that I got in here. SanDisk Cruiser Glide 1.27 Partition 1. That's got my Windows install media on it, and that's what I wanted to boot to. We got it booting to my USB drive, which is what I wanted to do. And so we're going to, I think we click escape. You have not made any changes to the BIOS settings. Yes, and hopefully it takes us to Windows install. Oh wait, there we go. Hold up. I'm getting a little worried there. I was like, oh no. Oh, thank you God. Alright, so you probably can't see that. I'll move you a little. Actually, I'll just zoom in kind of. Wrong way, self. Alright, so we got language to install. Yes, English, US. Next. Install now. And setup is starting. I'll bring you guys back to normal view. Alright, so I don't have a product key in here. I kept looking to find one, but I found out I can get it later. So right now I don't have a product key. Alright, so I'm going to go with Windows Home. Next. Microsoft software. This is the terms and conditions that no one ever reads. For all I know, it just signed over right to my butthole. Alright, so we're not upgrading, we're doing a clean install, which would be this one, custom. Alright, so, you see these? You're trying to figure out which one is which. I can, because the free spaces and total sizes are different. This here's the hard drive. This is the SATA SSD. This is the NVMe. If you were doing it yourself and had some that were the same size and might be confused as to which one is which, you would have to take and unplug the power cord from, not the power cord, but the cord that goes from the motherboard to the SSD or the hard drive. So if I wanted to make sure I'm just going on this, the NVMe, then I would have to unplug the motherboard cord from my SATA SSD, and my hard drive. And those two would not show up here. So I'm going to take in this one. And now we just wait. Alright, so after a little while, we come back here and you choose which region you're in. And we are in the United States, which is usually, I understand that it's usually the one that's primarily highlighted, so we're going to click yes. And by the way, your computer will restart a couple times in the process of this, just don't panic. Is this the right keyboard layout? Yes. No. Alright, I fixed it. The problem was that my computer was not plugged in. I mean, the computer was plugged in, but the cord to the modem was not. Alright. So, I have an account already, so alright, so you enter your email and your password associated with your you enter the email and the password associated with your Microsoft account. God, why is English so hard? Create a PIN. What takes? Because I'm not gonna need it. Alrighty, yes. Now this technically spyware. This one here lets you have those weird ad experiences, as does this one. Like when you think about something and suddenly you see ads for it all over the place. That's what these two help do. And this one. And even this one. All of them help with that. So I'm just going to click accept because I don't care. Not like I'm planning to join the Taliban in here. Skip this part. And here we are! Woo! Yeah, we got it going, boys. Wait a minute, am I already on a genuine build of Windows? We did it! We're done! Alright, so we got our Steam up and ready to rock and roll, but there's one problem. We ain't got no games on it yet. And I don't have good internet connection where I live, and I sure as shit don't want to sit here and wait for games that are like almost 100 gigabits large in size to download with a 1 megabit per second download speed. So what I did was that I put a Steam library and all these games on this guy right here. This here is a portable hard drive. And I'm going to plug it into my computer and hopefully, Steam library. So I'm going to open up the File Explorer. I'm gonna, let's see, Steam library. Not in quick access in this PC. There we go. So we got Steam library and and now we just wait, and I think this will work. I don't know. It might. I was told it was. Alright, so this is League of Legends, and it is a terrible, terrible game to benchmark with. And it's also a game I have a love-hate relationship with. But it also presents a great opportunity to tell you about refresh rates and monitor equipment. So you might spend a whole lot of money on your rig, and cheap out on your monitor, and that can be bad in the long run for a couple of reasons. Now, used to, if you didn't have a good refresh rate, it would result in something called flickering, which this was back when they had cathode ray tubes for monitors, which are like the old ones that you probably had in school in the early 2000s and the 90s. But flickering was kind of where it would the brightness would kind of pulsate. And nowadays, what you got to worry about is possibility that your system, your monitor, might not be able to keep up with your system, which is bad. Like right now, I'm getting 240 FPS on this. And that's largely because I don't have the frame rate locked. Some people lock it so that way it doesn't go above a certain frame rate. And the reason they do that, because sometimes their monitor isn't good enough to keep up with the system. And what will happen is you'll get this thing called ghosting, which is, it's one of those things I could very well show you what it was better than I can explain, but I don't have a older monitor to show that I can hook up to this computer to show you. But basically it means that instead of everything being fluid, it kind of be darting back and forth. This monitor right here has a refresh rate of 144 Hertz. And that means that it refreshes itself 144 times a second, meaning that the image on screen is refreshing 144 times a second. Yeah, I'm wondering where they are too, buddy. I'm in the middle of talking, which is why I'm not doing too good. Come here, bitch. Woo! Anywho, that's why you need to make sure that your monitor can keep up with your system, because you don't want to spend a lot of money on getting gargantuan amounts of frames per second and then have a monitor that can't keep up with it. Come here, bitch.
Hey, you better back up on my boy, bitch ass.
This is Doom Eternal, and it is a much more commonly accepted benchmark game. And right now we're not doing much of anything, so our FPS is kind of high. It's at 165 right now, and what you normally want to get is 60. I would also like to mention that CPU and GPU temperature are also things you're going to want to look out for. But right now it's 149 and 155 degrees Fahrenheit for the GPU and CPU respectively. And that's what it's been not long after I started this game. But I think that's okay. If it's not, I'll interrupt this and, future me will interrupt and tell you that I'm wrong and that you shouldn't listen to a word I say. But anyhow, moving on. Alright guys, we are done and everything is hooked up and put together. Peripherals, equipment, monitors, everything. It's all good to go. Really appreciate y'all sticking with me through this video, and I hope you like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Adepto Bonum, and God bless.